You know his name, but not the network that protected it. This is Epstein Unsealed, and we're about to pull back every layer. Let's take it all the way back. Before the island, before the mansion, before the black book, before the private jets. Jeffrey Epstein was just a college dropout from Brooklyn, no degree, no certification, and no clear direction. But somehow, he lands a job teaching math and physics at one of the most elite prep schools in New York City, the Dalton School. Dalton wasn't just any kind of school. It was a pipeline for power, the kind of place where billionaires send their kids and political dynasties are born. Somehow, this guy with no formal education credentials walks right in the front door and gets handed a classroom. Back in the 1970s, Dalton School was run by Donald Barr, the former OSS intelligence officer and the father of the future Attorney General, William Barr. For some mysterious reason, he gave Jeffrey Epstein his first official job, teaching math and physics to the children of Manhattan's rich and powerful. Now, you might be thinking, maybe the guy was a genius. Maybe he dazzled in the interview. Maybe he had connections. Maybe. But none of that explains why what happened next happened. Just a couple years later, Epstein was fired. Take a look at this. According to multiple reports, Epstein's behavior with teenage girls made the faculty and the administrators very uncomfortable. Now let that marinate. The man who hired him, Donald Barr, not only had an intelligence background, he had also written a book. This book was a dystopian sci-fi novel called Space Relations. And guess what this book was about? It was about child sex slavery on another planet. Yes, you heard that right. What are the odds? Epstein's first job came from a man who wrote fantasy fiction about the same twisted world Epstein would later bring into life, only his was off the coast of St. Thomas, not Saturn. And just like that, the door was opened. Fired or not, Epstein was in the room, and someone wanted him there. Let that sizzle for a minute. The man who would one day oversee Epstein's prosecution was the son of the man who gave Epstein his first foot in the door. But by then, the damage was done. He'd already learned the first rule of the game. Proximity is power. Dalton wasn't just a job, it was a gateway. And the people he met there, they would open the next door. So let's connect the dots. Shortly after being fired, Epstein somehow lands at Bear Stearns, which is one of the biggest investment banks on Wall Street. No degree, no license, no real background. But somehow he gets brought in to advise the wealthy on their financial portfolios. By 1980, he's a limited partner. By 1981, he's out. The official reason? Policy violations. But nobody ever quite explained what that meant. And still, he walks away with powerful contacts, insider knowledge, and the kind of Rolodex you don't just happen into. Somebody wanted him close. Somebody wanted him useful. Because Epstein wasn't just lucky. He was being positioned. So Epstein gets fired from Dalton. Any other man with no college degree, no teaching certification, and a reputation for creeping on teenage girls, he's lucky if he ends up flipping burgers or selling used cars. But not Epstein. He ends up at Bear Stearns. Let's be clear. Bear Stearns was not some mom and pop operation. This was one of the top investment banks in the world. Heavy hitters, billion-dollar deals, big boy seats only. And Epstein, with zero background in finance, got in the door on a recommendation. Ace Greenberg was the CEO of Bear Stearns at the time, and the person who recommended Epstein to him, one of his former Dalton students' fathers. Boom. Epstein had already wormed his way into the elite class, not by earning it, but by being useful to it. Now, what exactly did that father owe him? Why was he willing to vouch for Epstein? Was it just because he liked his kid's math teacher, or did Epstein already have dirt? Epstein walks in the door with no resume, and within a few years, he's managing clients with tens of millions in assets. What's more shocking than how he got in is how fast he started climbing. Because Wall Street didn't just let him in, it protected him, it promoted him, it used him. And just like that, Epstein was building relationships with a very same financial elite whose kids he once tutored. From the classroom to the trading floor, he was no longer just in the room. He was learning how to read the checkbook, and someone made sure that the checks kept coming. So let's talk about Bear Stearns. After Epstein Epstein got fired from the Dalton School for what we'll just call questionable behavior with the female students, you think the next logical step would be, I don't know, unemployment, a background check, consequences? But nah, Epstein lands a job at Bear Stearns, a high-level investment bank. No college degree, no credentials, no licensing. And still, someone gave him a desk, a title, and eventually a whole portfolio. Now pause right here and ask yourself, who gets hired at a Wall Street firm with no college degree, no Series 7, and no prior finance experience, unless someone with pull made it happen? He was brought in as a junior assistant to a senior trader, and he quickly wormed his way into even higher circles. But it wasn't because he was a financial genius. It's because he knew how to move money quietly. And that's exactly what he started doing. While at Bear Stearns, Epstein began playing with offshore accounts, routing money in and out of places like the Cayman Islands and the Virgin Islands, long before he had a private island there. Let's take a look. He was dabbling in shell companies, off-the-books consulting, and advising ultra-wealthy clients on how to legally dodge taxes, and possibly how to hide other things too. That's the real reason he got fired. It wasn't just a personality clash, they claimed. Bear Stearns found out he was making side deals, using his position to build a shadow financial pipeline right under their nose. But instead of blowing the whistle, they let him walk away quietly. No criminal charges, no press releases, no SEC referral. Just a pat on the back and a trail of offshore bank activity that nobody wanted to explain. Because remember, he wasn't working for Bear Stearns. He was working through them. And whoever was backing him, they weren't done yet. Because the next person he meets is the billionaire who hands him the keys to an empire. Let's talk about Les Wexner. Let me ask you something. What would it take for a billionaire, the billionaire behind Victoria's Secret, to hand over his mansion, his money, his full legal power of attorney to anybody? No resume, no track record, no proof of expertise, just vibes? Because that's exactly what Les Wexner did. Wexner was the founder and the CEO of L Brands, the parent company of Victoria's Secret, Limited, Bath and Body Works, all of it. He was a titan of retail. And somehow Jeffrey Epstein became his financial advisor. I mean, that's what they called it. But this wasn't advising. This was access. Take a look at this property. Wexner bought one of the largest private townhouses in Manhattan, and then he transferred it to Epstein for free. Let that sink in. A billionaire just gives a mansion to a former math teacher with no license, no firm, no reputation, and then gives him power of attorney, which is legal control over his entire empire. That means Epstein could buy or sell property in Wexner's name, move his money, make decisions on his behalf. Who does that? Wexner later tried to downplay it, saying that he trusted Epstein and that he was misled. But by then, Epstein wasn't just managing his money. He was moving millions through shell companies tied to L Brands, funneling cash, property, even aircraft. And this wasn't just financial. Wexner's inner circle, his staff, his security, his homes, all became Epstein's playground. So the real question is, who introduced them? There are whispers about mutual friends from Ohio, and some say Ghislaine was already circling in these elite circles, but others believe there was an intermediary from Bear Stearns who made the introduction. Now, we may never get the full receipt, but here is what we do know. The moment Epstein met Wexner, his life changed, and so did his role in the game, because now he had a billionaire's blessing, a legit reason to mingle with the rich and powerful, and the keys to build the blackmail machine. And Wexner, he didn't just look the other way. He opened the door and walked him inside. Coming up next, let's talk about what Epstein did with all that power.